I'm mad nobody ever figured out that Vincent Adult Man was 3 little dudes in a trench coat. I saw it. Bojack saw it. How did nobody else see it? That actually is one of my favorite longest running jokes in a TV series, by the way.
Are you seriously trying to make me jealous by flirting with what is very obviously just 3 kids stacked on top of each other under a trench coat?
Netflix's animated show Bojack Horseman is about a group of humans and anthropomorphic animals living in LA while wallowing in alcohol and existential self-despair. Despite the absurd premise of this show, animals and people and cartoons and jokes, this show knows where your feels are and how to hit you directly in them.
And I will never forgive you for that. Now get the fuck out of my house.
With new and familiar faces, Bojack tricks us with comedy, but inside it tells a tale that we can all relate to. Am I good enough? Why can't I be happy? I want to be better, but I can't. Man, I ain't trying to hear all that. That's sad. Alright, put on something nice, something calming. How about Drake and Josh?
Josh, what? Look, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm probably the worst brother in the world, and, you're way better off without me, I just need you to understand that... Sorry, Josh, I'm sorry. Alright, back to Bojack.
Bojack uses the visuals and comedy to go along with the heartbreak, anger, and sadness. But behind all of that, I love this show. Let's talk about it, guys. I'm excited. This one's a doozy. What's going on, guys? My name's Cliff, and this is Unpack That Bowl. Unpack That Bowl, the show where we take a deep dive into pop culture. On this episode of Unpack That Bowl, we'll take a deep dive into what makes Bojack Horseman so good. By the way, there's going to be some spoilers, so if you care, here's your warning. Voice acting. Will Arnett as Bojack Horseman is perfect. He's got that deep, distinct Will Arnett voice.
Quietly, some of us here are trying to forget you exist.
Classic Bojack.
He brings Bojack to life as a sarcastic, self-loathing, full of himself alcoholic. So basically, Will Arnett as himself. With leading the show in one of my favorite episodes, an episode composed entirely of one long monologue, Will Arnett carries the show. We also have Alison Brie as Diane Nguyen, a bright and cheery energy, and when I close my eyes, I almost see Annie from Community.
The drugs have something to say, and even though they are drugs, they come from science.
If there's a weak point of the casting, it might be Alison Brie playing a Vietnamese American while being a whole-ass white lady, but she has said that might have been a mistake. The creator, Ralph, how you say this nigga's name? Raphael Bobs Waxberg has even said that might have been a mistake. But Alison brings Diane to life, and I feel every emotion that Diane feels. Then we have Aaron Paul as Todd Chavez. I think this was the most brilliant casting.
Uh-oh, is that guy trying to kill himself? Nope, just a cupcake gun.
Because I never thought of Jesse from Breaking Bad as a whimsical stoner with no purpose in life but to get into goofy misadventures. There's no greater joy than hearing Jesse Pinkman's voice in Todd's body while cheering.
Hooray! 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 I'm helping!
Hey, maybe that was Jesse in another life. There's also Amy Seegers as Princess Caroline and Paul F. Tompkins as Mr. Peanut Butter, and they both fit into their roles and make you believe the cat and dog characters are actually human.
Oh, look.
Patton Oswalt and Kristen Shaw also get recognition here as standouts in their roles. Kristen, especially, made me cry on one occasion. The humor. This show is hilarious, but a lot of people discredit it because it's a cartoon. Being a cartoon gives it a lot of advantages at being funny. First, there's the sight gags. Bojack lives and breathes sight gags. The background of any given shot of Bojack inevitably has one joke that's in plain sight, or it's hidden with a wink, or it's a little bit of both. Jokes crop up on movie posters, book spines, and other punchlines emerge in the background as characters in the foreground obviously continue their scenes. Season 3, Fish Out of Water, is the best example. This episode features no voice because Bojack goes underwater, which is like going to a different country, and Bojack feels like a fish out of water, so because he can't speak and he can't understand, there's no point of speaking, so there are no words in the entire episode. In fact, even the punchline,
Hey, move it, buddy! What are you, deaf? Oh, you have got to be kidding.
plays on the fact that there were no words in the episode. It's also really punny. This also has a lot of overlap with the sight gag, but thanks to the fact that Bojack's cast, packed with creatures of all stripes, gives the writers tons of chances to make an animal pun, and they rarely disappoint. A poster in the background advertises the movie about someone finding out he's being cheated on. The tagline is, "This Christmas, somebody's getting cucked." There's so many more examples, I gotta keep going. It's also sarcastically funny too. Seconds after taking you 10 rounds and knocking the wind out of your gut, it can deliver some of the biggest laughs. One scene can show Bojack grappling with the darkest parts of his psyche, and the next can include a TV news crawl with a morbid line like, "Giraffe CEO breaks glass ceiling." Another example of this can be seen when one character has a miscarriage and, when at her worst and feeling down, just wants to go out to lunch and eat, and is constantly reminded,
"Everybody love a Mr. Carey.
throughout lunch,
Mr. Carey Underwood.
about her miscarriage.
Mr. Carey Mulligan. Mr. Carey, first name Mariah. Look at all of these Mr. Carey."
In a dark but funny way. Also, the pop culture references are off the charts. There are so many, it is jam-packed. From its characters, to the plot lines, to the one-off jokes. It almost has to be. It's a show about movies and books and TV shows. It is about pop culture itself, so the references better pop. A show that's so in-depth and about movies and based in Hollywood, or Hollywood as it's called in the Bojack universe, has to be prepared to be called and has to know its stuff about the industry to not be totally dismissed. Bojack shines throughout all of this and in fact uses real-world situations like the intern boycott at Netflix or public shootings that happen in America,
saying if people have the right pumped up kicks, maybe they can outrun the bullets.
They jam these references inside the story. To their benefit, they also have tons of real-life actors that want to voice their characters on the show, so that helps for the references. And finally, the wordplay for this show was like no other. Tongue twisters, the onomatopoeias.
You saying that Van Sant Camp wants to recant on Van Camp? Because they can't!
I used to watch Hank Hippopoulos' Dance Pop Cosmopolis. I even bought his novelty rap album, the Hank Hippopoulos Hip Hop Hypothesis.
It's
A real Jill Pill jail fail killer whale caper.
all over the place. Ultimately, that's a credit to Bojack's stacked and talented cast, including Will Arnett, Paul F. Tompkins, Allison Brie, and Amy Cedrus. The show can pull these off with confidence because of these actors. Cedrus in particular gets several mouthfuls in season 4. These are kind of her things, and it's even cute later how when she adopts a baby, the baby loves that she can do this. As Princess Caroline gets into the business of managing, not being an agent, she has to manage Courtney Portney, and also gets into a series of incredibly ridiculous internal rhymes. Take for example her pitch to Diane to interview Portnoy.
Courts me if you can. The 1940s Cannes France set story of a can dancer who contracts cancer but continues to can as a canny cadaver who plays the accordion with Kevin Corrigan, Kevin Kline, Chris Pine, and Chris Kattan.
Got it.
It's also not afraid to get serious. See, when it needs to be, Bojack can talk about the darkness of human reality. Can we change and make better decisions, or are we doomed to follow our own traits and tendencies? And I think that's pretty cool, because it also gives you jokes, but it's like, oh, you're gonna get serious real quick. Season 1 is all about Bojack being a conceited, drunk celebrity, and when he realizes that this is how people see him as well, it sends him off the edge. Season 1 ends with him gaining his childhood dream role as Secretariat, but in Season 2, we see that this is overshadowed with Bojack still not being happy. I'll talk more about that later. Shadowed by the accidental death of a co-star, he runs away to visit a friend, but almost does something awful with her 17-year-old daughter.
And if you ever try to contact me or my family again, I will fucking kill you.
And at this point I started to realize that Bojack is a flawed character. He is not someone you can root for. But again, I'll get into that later. Season 3 sees more death, and as the show goes on, characters start dropping like flies. Some characters have the worst day of their lives, and breakups, cheating, and divorce is rampant. Basically, this is Game of Thrones on crack, but a cartoon. Behind all of this is Bojack. Underneath the humor and the colorful visuals, Bojack is a story of a very, very sad horseman. You see, Bojack is a washed-up sitcom actor from the 90s who made bank on the Full House-esque show called Horsin' Around, a show where he as a horse adopted 3 teenagers and raised them as his own. He's massively depressed, and countless times over and over again, we watch Bojack struggle with his destructive tendencies. These come from his awful childhood which haunts him, both as memories of drunken fights from his parents and constant verbal abuse in ways which warped his personality. Now I won't get into it too much, but Bojack is the way he is because of his parents, mainly his mother. His father's a piece of trash, but mainly his mother, and his mother is the way she is, which, not to excuse her and not to excuse Bojack, but her mother was lobotomized when her son died in the war.
Oh, well, I'd love to stay, but I must be going. As a modern American man, I am woefully unprepared to manage a woman's emotions. I was never taught, and I will not learn. Take care, you two.
So, this family tree is all sorts of messed up, and Bojack was always going to turn out messed up, or was he? Bojack is selfish, cruel, and impulsive. He knows this is how he is due to intergenerational trauma, but that does not absolve him, and when he acknowledges this, he tries to mask it with drugs and alcohol and gaining other people's approval. Bojack's journey isn't a straight line towards progress, but it's one of the most riveting stories of the last few decades worthy of television. Bojack treads a shaky line between sympathetic, lovable goofball to criminally irredeemable narcissist. He both wants approval and tries to be better, but keeps doing awful things. Bojack craves attention and needs constant reassurance from other people that he is a good person. He desperately wants people around him to love him and care for him, and he wants to do the same, but he can't. All he seems to do is push people away. Bojack Horseman portrays a profoundly flawed individual who, despite borderline remaining sympathetic, has committed awful acts. When talking to Sarah Lynn on set as a child, he gives her this awful advice passed on from his mother.
The most important thing is you gotta give the people what they want, even if it kills you, even if it empties you out until there's nothing left to empty. No matter what happens, no matter how much it hurts, you don't stop dancing and you don't stop smiling, and you give those people what they want.
Countlessly time after time, he takes Princess Caroline for granted. Sleeping with Sarah Lynn, as an adult, it still feels weird, and those aren't even his worst offenses. I think the show then poses the question with Bojack's entire mess. How do you become a better person where every instinct inside of you is telling you to be cruel, selfish, impulsive, and insecure? All he wants is happiness, but it fails. He's broken, but he's also a piece of poop. He fills his life with distractions because there's a hole in his heart where love goes. Not really, but hear me out. This hole comes from his awful childhood. His parents hated each other. His father was a generic, stereotypical 70s white, toxic man. But his mother watched her mother be lobotomized and told never to love anything because once you do, it'll hurt you.
Love does things to a person, terrible things. Beatrice, promise me you'll never love anyone as much as I loved Cracker Jack.
I promise I won't.
Why, I have half a mind.
And she passed that on to her child. So Bojack is constantly searching for love. And without the adoration of his fans to fall back on, he has nothing to bolster his own feelings of self-worth. When he thinks about this too long, he turns to drugs and alcohol. Once Diane gives an honest display of who Bojack is in his biography, One Trick Pony, the curtain is pulled back and Bojack is forced to see how others actually view him, a deeply flawed and self-destructive alcoholic. This revelation is hugely troubling for him, and he turns to drugs to try and rewrite the book and erase her words, but he can't find good memories, and it's hopeless, and also, writing a book while on 11 different drugs doesn't help. He finally comes out of it and asks Diane,
"Am I just doomed to be the person that I am? The person in that book? I mean, it's not too late for me, is it? It's not too late. Diane, I need you to tell me that it's not too late."
And can he be better? And the show gives you dark humor like no other, because after he says all that, and Diane says,
Bojack,
somebody in the audience goes,
"Aren't you the horse from horsing around?"
Can he be better than what he was? Or is he stuck being the horse from horsing around? When Bojack gains his role in Secretariat, the role that he dreamed of for his idol, he wants to be happy about it, but he can't. Now, the philosopher Albert Camus has this notion of a thing called the absurd. Now, let me break that down for the dum-dums like me so we can all understand. What Camus says the absurd is that we are born in life seeking a purpose, but there is no purpose in life. That is absurd. We're placed in this world for no reason, and inherently it makes no sense. Imagine that you make a hammer. That hammer now enters life with a purpose. It's going to hammer a nail. Unlike a hammer, when humans are born, we have no purpose. And we have to fight that because we seek purpose. And for Camus, he says he has 3 answers to combat this absurdity. There's suicide, but that's not really a solution, it's more like an escape. There's religion, which again is not a solution because this requires you to do little and irrational thinking and have faith. That is easier than facing the absurd, but it's not a solution. And the third is accepting the absurd and embracing it for what it really is. Because why let the absurd win? Life is fruitless. Enjoy those tasks and give it its own meaning. Bojack tries to fight the absurd, but he also clashes with this thing called the hedonic treadmill. The hedonic treadmill basically says, again for the dum-dums like me, that we all have a base level of happiness, and no matter how many good or bad things happen to us, we eventually gravitate back towards this base level of happiness. Doesn't matter how much fame and fortune you have a base level of happiness, and you will always roll back to that same spot. Depending on your level, you're either really blessed or you're forever cursed. Returning back to this level is a human trait, and Bojack goes through this all the time. With Secretariat, we see that Bojack's level is extremely low, and even after gaining something that he craves, he crashes back down to his own hell. Bojack tries to find happiness throughout the first 4 seasons to raise his levels, but it evades him time and time again. You are the things that you do. Does Bojack really deserve happiness? Throughout the show, we're shown time and time again how trash Bojack is. He started out as a maybe lovable goofy guy who just liked to party a little bit too much, but as the show progresses, we're faced with the same reality Bojack is. He keeps doing bad, awful things, so he must be the sum of his actions. Todd says it best.
No, Bojack, just stop. You are all the things that are wrong with you.
Yes, his parents made him, but he is also the actions of what he does. Destroying something someone loves so they don't leave you, or betraying your best friend who gave you your career because of your image, is not what a good person does. And no, I don't think Bojack should have quit in protest for Herb. But hey, maybe have a little bit more of a backbone, or even, how about this? Don't completely cut him off and never contact him again. We also notice one thing as the show progresses. Bojack seems to have a lot of power in most of his relationships. With Bojack and Wanda was a child because she was frozen in time, and when she came out of her coma, she was still stuck in her 20s. Bojack and Princess Caroline is the most toxic best friend relationship I've ever seen. Princess Caroline has so much love for Bojack and would do anything for him, both platonically and romantically. And Bojack never acknowledges this until the very end. Bojack and Gina is worse for obvious reasons. And Bojack and Sarah Lynn is probably the most tragic and heartbreaking, because he was her TV father, and she came to him in a time of crisis, and he took advantage of her. One of Bojack's worst acts is where his irresponsibility directly led to the death of someone extremely close to him. When it happens, Bojack's on one of his benders, and the person on a sober streak ODs. Now that happens in season 3. In season 6, the final season, we learn Bojack waited 16 minutes to call 911, something that makes his maybe drunken error before unforgivable. At the end of his rope, delirious and drugged up before he gives rehab a try, he goes off the deep end and chokes his girlfriend on set in a dazed and confused bend. He then goes to rehab and learns how to try to be a better person, and he almost succeeds. But when faced with the consequences of his past dug up, he cracks, crumbles.
I just keep thinking about those 17 minutes. You waiting in the parking lot after she died. But she wasn't actually dead yet. She died in the hospital.
Right, but at the time, I
You ever
didn't...
wonder what would have happened if you didn't take those 17 minutes? Do you think she might still...
No, look, obviously when I did all that stuff, I wasn't...
So to recap, you gave Sarah Lynn alcohol when she was a child. She then became an addict.
Well, come on, there was a lot of stuff in between.
I'm talking now. You're not talking. When she was intoxicated, you had sex with her. And when she was sober, you gave her the heroin that killed her. Then, in an effort to cover for yourself, you waited to call the paramedics that might have saved her life. And you don't think you have any power over women.
And relapses. After a very vivid near-death experience, he shapens up, for now. This show was about a truly flawed man, and even after rehab, he still has to face the consequences for everything he did intoxicated. This possibly leads to Bojack leaving looking for meaning behind, and finally living despite the absurdity of his life. Why do you even like this show? I like this show because it's funny, it's well written, the dynamic between characters that I haven't even talked about are so great that you should go back and watch this show or rewatch this show. You can really tell that the creators put their all into Bojack Horseman. Bojack as a whole is a messed up person. He has aspects of himself that are relatable to everyone. And this show is essentially a guide on how to not end up like Bojack. Don't be like Bojack. He's trying, but he can barely manage, and he's failing. Bojack has a lot of themes that you can live by. You can live life in spite of the absurdity and learn how to leave toxicity behind. And watch this show. On top of being a phenomenally produced show, it'll give you the blueprint of trying to be a better person. Like I said, there are so many other plot lines and story devices. I'm going to have to go into the breakdowns of some of the other episodes, like the monologue episode or the view from down under. This show is phenomenal. Let me know how you guys feel about Bojack the Horseman. If you've seen it, what's your favorite episode, and tell me your favorite character, and we could talk all about it. Guys, we got some other great content on this channel. We're going to come at you with it all, so thanks for watching. My name's Cliff, and this has been Unpack That Bowl. Peace.